Hello, welcome to our Business Agility video podcast for today. So today what we're going to do is explore the top business technology trends for 2021. What we're going to do, as always, our video podcasts are 30 minutes in length. We explore business and technology topics for small and medium-sized business owners in Western Canada. Today, the way we handle this is that first of all, we'll do a quick introduction to our panelists, and then we'll get right into our topic. Our format is interactive. For people on our live audience in our webinar, send your comments or questions into the chat box. For people joining us on our Facebook live stream, send comments directly into that. So with that, we'll get right into our topic, and it's going to be a little bit different today. I'm going to do some screen share and openly explore some topics, and then Samantha and I will debunk or throw opinions and kind of go back and forth around what we see as relevant really for today's small business, medium-sized business owner. What I'll do is quickly introduce myself. I'm Murray Quibel. I'm the president of Accurus Solutions. We're a cloud enterprise or enterprise resource planning or ERP software company. So business trends and technology trends are very relevant for us and for me in my career. And that's, of course, making sure that we kind of bridge the gap between what software technology companies are delivering with what business owners need. That's exactly what we do every day. So I'll turn it over to Sam for a quick introduction, and we'll get right into our topic.
Yeah, and my name is Samantha Knighton-DeForge. I work with Accurus as the Business Solutions Manager, and I am essentially the bridge that Murray just referred to. I help our companies and our customers bridge the gap between the technology solutions and the business side of things, because that bridge often doesn't really seem to exist in a lot of cases. You're either being pushed technical stuff or you're trying to find business solutions, but there is a bridge that needs to happen there, and that's sort of what I do at Accurus.
Okay, so we're going to get right into our topic today, and we're going to change it up a little bit because I'm going to share my screen immediately, and I'm going to just kind of take you through a little bit of a journey on some of the top business technology topics for 2021. So just give me a sec while I share my screen, and we'll go from there. Okay, have you got my screen there? So what I'm going to do, I just typed in a very basic Google search. What are the top business technology topics for 2021? Well, let's see what that brings us. And what the interesting thing, the first thing I find, first of all, I'm finding a lot of stuff here, and there's some stuff from Gartner. There's some stuff by Forbes. There's Deloitte is another one that pops up here pretty early in the trend. And yeah, here's some top trends, tech trends for 2021. The first thing that I'm seeing is there's a lot of stuff going on around here. So I think the first thought I have, if we start to click into any of these, I'm going to walk you through some of these because there's some interesting. If I click on the Gartner one, for example, and then we start to kind of compare what Gartner is saying versus what Forbes is saying and so on. We're starting to see some common trends here. But the first common trend here, let me scroll down here just a little bit. So this one here, you'll see a lot of buzzwords. We see AI a lot. I have no idea, or what cybersecurity mesh is, but what we find is there's a lot of technical terms. It's as if there's a lot of people sitting around during the pandemic, sitting in front of their computers and going, what can I write about today? What kind of new technology term can we come up to with today and write something about? And there's a little bit of that going on, I have to admit. But when we start to break down these topics, and again, that's what we do every day, is break down technical topics that sound, holy man, a little bit of mumbo jumbo, they sound pie in the sky, or it sounds like it's something that's way, way deep into the future. And in reality, a lot of the stuff is important right now, but really what we always break down is to what are we going to do about it today, and how does that affect my business? But if we start to, so what I'm going to take you through three documents here. One is this one from Gartner, and the other is there's one from Forbes and then from Deloitte. And then we're going to kind of look at some of the trends that they're doing and explain a little bit, but then we're going to openly debate how it might be relevant for your business. Okay, so as we bear with me here as I go through this Gartner one here. So I think the interesting thing here is that they talk about some things like this, all the different trends in here. But as we break it down here, they're introducing a new term here, IOB. Well, what the heck is that? And we'll get that out in a minute here. But I think this is really important how they've summarized it here, and I really like this here. So this year's trends fall into under three themes: people centricity, location independence, and resilient delivery. But as we look at each of those topics, so people centricity, what that means is that how people work and interact, it's still about people, but we're just interacting a little bit different. So we're into digitalized processes. That might be how we have meetings. So just like we're doing here now, we're using Zoom. Zoom is a common term that people haven't, nobody knew of Zoom. Well, we did. We were using it for a few years already, but nobody had heard of Zoom before 2020. Again, locations, where things physically exist isn't as important as anymore. So that kind of affects recruiting or even how you sell goods. And this is really important. So meaning that if you're used to having a brick and mortar store open today somewhere in downtown Calgary, is that that store might be closed right now for reasons outside of your control. So looking at markets that are outside of your geographic area, again, that's the location independence, meaning that you can sell to customers all over the place, or maybe have people working in different places. And that also kind of cuts over into resilient delivery, meaning that how you're actually being able to deliver your services and products needs, and we've had changing rules all the time, but how we have to position for that and be aware that there's going to be some differences down the road here. But I will break down each of these topics a little bit more. But so I'll throw it over to you, Sam. What do you think about some of this stuff here, and what's your initial thoughts about some of the trends for 2021?
You know what? I think it's funny because I think this is something that we've been doing even well prior to COVID, anyways. So I think it's kind of funny that, Gartner's posting articles like this, in 2021, when in all reality, this is something that we've been doing it as a company for many years, not even
Yeah.
prior to COVID, right? So a part of me thinks, well, are we sort of these pioneers of this new methodology, and focusing and centralizing people using digital tools?
Yeah.
Not location has never been a concern for us, being a remote team. And we've always been able to deliver. I mean, yes, our implementations have always been delivered for the most part remotely, and that's typically how software is implemented anyways. But there are the times where there is a requirement to go on site, taking your customer out for lunch, seeing how things are going, checking in, doing all those sorts of things, or setting up warehouse scanners if you need that, right? But as far as the actual software component, that's always been virtual.
Yeah, it's
It's just
interesting.
weird. Oh,
It's
is
also
Paxton having
strange.
a ball?
Yeah, also strange is being okay with dogs barking in the background. But let me mute for a second while that carries on here. I'm going to take us through this because I think what Samantha just mentioned is a lot of that when we tend to break down some of the technical terms here, a lot of this, it does become a lot of the themes that we've been kind of talking about and delivering, as we go here. So let me break down some of these things here. So this is the first one I mentioned, the IOB. This is for probably most of you you've heard about the Internet of Things, so IoT. This is a new one, really. IOB. Well, what the heck is that?
Never heard of
Um,
that.
yeah, I mean, the interesting thing, I like how they've defined it here. So, Internet of Behaviors. And I like how they've talked about here is technologies that gather the digital dust of daily life. And if you think about that, the things that are relevant for us, and now in the COVID times, we have the tracking apps. So the COVID alert or the tracking apps that track your location, they know where you're at. So if you're near someone that's had COVID, that's what this is doing. So this kind of stuff actually creeps directly into kind of your personal life. And there's been some really interesting kind of privacy type issues that crop up here, but that's an interesting one. I like how it's interesting one. It's not that relevant for business, frankly, other than that tracking people is with devices and stuff is always something that I think that we might strive to do a little bit
Well, the
more. But
second point there, they talk about that insurance, for example, commercial vehicles, and then they install these applications on your phones to monitor your driving, right? That way you
Yeah.
can lower your insurance rates and things like that.
Yeah,
I
that's a
didn't,
good.
I mean, I've heard of that, but I haven't actually, I didn't know that was defined as something known
Yeah.
as
I'm gonna
Internet of Behavior.
I'm going to get into a little less technical ones here. The trend number 2, they're talking about the total experience. And this one goes directly to some of the themes that we've talked about around. So what this is, total experience is the multi-experience. And sometimes in an e-commerce example, we'll talk about an omni-channel experience. Again, a little bit of a technical term. What we're trying to do is align the customer experience with employees and the users to transform the business outcome. What you're trying to do is make sure that customers can interact with what you're doing. They can buy your products and services quicker and easier. They can return goods or ask questions and be far more efficient with that, and using technology to do that. But that's kind of this total experience, which I think is key. And again, at its core, really, it becomes how can we, have customers interact with us directly, which includes things like customer portals or e-commerce or self-service resources. And I would 100% agree that that's what people are demanding, especially as they become digital and they're reliant on gathering stuff themselves. This total experience is a huge trend that it's not in the future. It's something that is happening right now.
I still think, though, that there are a lot of small and medium-sized businesses out in the market that think that something like an e-commerce solution is completely out of scope for them. And I
Yeah.
think that it'd be really good if one of these websites, Gartner or somebody, and maybe they have already, post an article and debunk how going online isn't that strenuous of an endeavor, and it's so easy to do. It's not daunting. It's not really that expensive. And, to be honest, it's a way for companies to get out there and expand their reach, with their retail stores, but also even go nationwide in a matter of weeks.
Yeah, it's what we're finding is, companies or businesses that have traditionally been, again, bricks and mortar are having to switch to be digital. But again, this total experience, again, they want to have the same experience as they walk into if they're walking into a store in the mall versus if they hit your website. They want to be welcomed. They want products to be there. They want to try it on. I use quotes on that, but they want to do the same things that they could if they're interacting with people. We've got some work to do from the technology side around this, but the demand is already there. The privacy, we know that there's some privacy stuff going on for sure, and I think that'll be a trend. And again, the idea is that we still have an increasing need to share data. We're not going to give up the apps that work so well on our smartphones, but so I don't think we're going to stop using those and that kind of stuff. But the attention to privacy and data will, it'll be something that carries on here.
And I want to talk about this here for a minute, because back when I was, I think it was 2010, I was back in university or so at that point in time. And that's around the time that whole prison thing came out with the Edward Snowden privacy constraints, right? When he went to the NSA and said, guys, and told the public that, hey, the government's spying on you using Skype, they're breaking laws, they're breaking protocols and privacy acts. And I can't even tell you how many freaking essays I had to write on this topic, because it was so big as far as business ethics go. All my computer science classes was very relevant. But the amount of information was, and I wrote, I think, about 5 essays on it, and 3 that I was pro and 2 that I was against, just to change it up a bit. But a lot of people, and in the research that I did, 87% of people said they were okay with being spied on. They didn't care. They said, as long as I'm not breaking them, I have nothing to hide. They're like, if this is going to help protect our country, if this is going to help protect the world, whatever it might be, I have no problem with this. Record my phone calls. You're not going to find anything.
Well, I think it's even just, hey, if Google can help you get to your destination, 8 minutes quicker because they're monitoring traffic patterns, are you going to uninstall the location services because it relies on that? Well, no, I really want to know, can I get there 8 minutes quicker?
Exactly.
So,
but I think that number was 87. It was 87%. And that was back in 2010, 2011, whenever that whole thing happened. But I can guarantee you that if you ask somebody the same question now, the results would be substantially different.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
I really don't think that that statistic is no longer valid as far as how many people would be okay with it. And the argument was, I have nothing to hide. If this is going to protect us, by all means, go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. I think if everyone, it's the same as the if you think about services such as Airbnb or these are exchange services. So basically, if you're rating them, so you're Travelocity or TripAdvisor, all these kinds of things, you're rating the hotel, but in return, they're rating you as a consumer. So again, if you got nothing to hide, if you didn't trash the hotel room, if you weren't disrespectful to the clerk and things like that, they're we're seeing this all the time in the sharing economy that not only are you rating the services, they're rating you back. So
Mm-hmm.
again, it's benefiting the people that have nothing to hide. If we're living a clean life and we're taking the high road, that's all good. And that's really, when we think
But
about it, that's
yeah.
what we want to strive towards.
A lot of companies are doing it nowadays. I mean, even for
Yeah.
myself, I was installing that My Fitness Pal
Mm,
application because my husband and I decided that we're going to track calories. I got sick of that. I totally kiboshed that. He's still doing this, but when I installed this My Fitness Pal app, the last question it asked me, because it tells you to fill out your name, your age, your height, your weight, and all that stuff, and then it tracks what you eat, right? And at the end, they asked if you would be okay with providing your information across countries and
yeah.
across or within the same country so that they can, keep statistics on it. I'm like, oh, sure, of course, I'll be a statistic. I have no problem doing that. You know what? My eating habits contribute to, health trends, health
Yeah.
doctors, and whatever it might be, right? And see what I'm doing, whether or not it's working for somebody else.
Yeah, but I think that there's always going to be that balance, and I think that's what we'll see kind of a lot, as we go through the balance of being part of a global community, as well as making sure that some of those privacy things are
Mm-hmm.
dealt with stronger. Distributed cloud it starts to get a little bit technical. What the heck is that? And all we're saying here, or all they're saying here, is that so we have cloud services distributed to different physical locations. A couple of the implications here that I'll point out here means that organizations that can still benefit from the public cloud, but if you're managing it internally or even managing a private cloud, what that means is that you're kind of limiting yourself. So what's saying here is that being able to leverage different data centers and have high availability and redundancy and performance uptime, all the kinds of things we want, um, those are available through public cloud providers, using the largest ones such as Google or Amazon or Microsoft. Again, this is important as we go forward. It's kind of setting aside that on-premise or even the private cloud model. That's the interesting thing here, is to fully get the benefits of it. It does suggest that you should adopt the services of a public cloud. And again, that's been consistent with what we've seen over the trend and what's driven kind of the adoption of cloud applications that we're seeing and using all the time. And that'll kind of go to the next point I'm going to talk here about anywhere operations. And this is kind of, again, some of the same themes here, but what they're saying in this is that is what we're saying again, access anywhere, anywhere, anytime. So customers, business partners, employees, you have to access your business operation. It doesn't matter where they are, but making sure you have efficient applications that are connected across across platform, across functions that you're doing in your business. That's what we're driving to here. But this is, again, a common theme that we've had to make sure that you really are on a platform that is kind of using modern technology and that. So anyway.
Well, I think that's really, the anywhere options, and it comes back to that, accessibility feature. Could you imagine if people, for instance, whether it was Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram, if they were having to access it from a specific computer, having to VPN through specific
Hmm.
devices without just being able to hit a website? Right? Like, I don't think a lot of people would really entertain the idea of social media if that was the case.
Yeah.
Maybe they would. I don't know, because it's never been a problem, right? When you want to access Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever, you hit a website, you go to linkedin.com, facebook.com, and you're on your profile after you log in, right? So now this is happening with business software. So, and it's so
Yeah.
funny to think that it's, for instance, in Acumatica's case, they did it 10 years ago, right? Which is 10 years ago, the idea of cloud was also such a scary topic for so many people. 10 years ago, nobody wanted to do it. Acumatica one up that and went into fully web based because that was a huge gamble on their part. Worked out in their favor. But
Yeah.
imagine if you had to literally use the same computer, or if your computer died, you have to reach out to Facebook support to get them to install a VPN tunnel or remote desktop connection on your computer in order for you to access your Facebook account.
Yeah,
So why are people doing it with business?
it is interesting, isn't it? Because it is something that as we sit back now, we go, well, yeah, that that's crazy. But it is interesting that there's so much legacy software out there in some of the core business applications that when you sit back and think about how people use Facebook or apps on their phone, that's just not the way technology is delivered, and that kind of goes into this. Now, this is that cyber. I'm going to get to the cybersecurity myths. I'm not going to get into this in much detail, but basically they're saying is that the tech traditional security models are having to change, and so cybersecurity mesh essentially allows security perimeter to be defined around the identity of a person or thing. Now, I don't want to break that down into anything any further, but what I want to take from this is that basically it kind of gets into that privacy and security area that there's some work to be done here, and it's the point being is it's different. So security today is different than it would have been 3 years ago or 10 years ago. So when you think about, hey, you might say, oh, people might say my server is more secure because it's on premise. Well, no, today that's not the case, because there's so many other things that people use, whether it's smartphones or laptops or their connected TVs or anything in their house. And that's kind of what, my interpretation of this is, that it needs to look at the person or the thing. There's so many interconnected applications, is that you have to change the way that security and is managed, and so that kind of again looks towards modern technology and kind of moving away from legacy systems.
That's kind of like with the redundancy aspect, right? And I
Yeah,
think the best way to dumb that down would be, let's say, Apple Music. If you, or if, or whatever, Spotify, if you're an Android user, but if you're using Apple Music or Spotify, you have your account, and all of the songs you're using are stored in the cloud,
yeah,
and they're backed up, on a redundant level. But if you have, let's say, an iPod, right, back in the day, you would have to directly load music onto your phone. So if
yeah,
your phone or your iPod or whatever you're using, whatever device got ran over by a car, you lost all that music off that device. And you would have to, at that point, copy it manually from, whatever device onto the device. But when I got my new phone back there a year ago, they copied my information over. And because I had Apple Music too, it remembered the songs that I had. I just had to make sure that I just re-downloaded them, but it remembered everything. I logged in with my Apple ID, boom, everything was there ready to be downloaded back on my device because it remembered.
yeah. I think that's yeah. I mean, it's kind of it's an easy example to relate to as a consumer, isn't it? I like this trend number 7. I don't intelligent composable business. Again, that sounds like a term that somebody came up with as they're writing an article. Goes, hey, let's just come up with a new term. But what I like is how they've defined it is a business that can adapt, fundamentally rearrange based on a current situation. So, and then we talk about accelerate digital business strategy, digital transformations, agility, being agile, make decisions quickly. Again, based on data. All this is saying is that we know that our business environment has changed. It will continue to change. And then, making sure that your business systems support that is critically important. I'll get into a couple. I still have 2 more papers I want to feature. Holy crap.
I guess you're not, because we only have 6 minutes left.
They're actually, interestingly enough, there's some of the same trends there. So we'll fly through those quickly. AI is something that does consistently pop up. So artificial intelligence is something that consistently pops up when people are talking about trends for 2021. It popped up in the trend for last year. And I think one of the key things is that I like the, where do they make the point in here? Is that as we switch gears, it's always to us. It's one thing for people to come up with pie in the sky ideas about artificial intelligence or machine learning, but what the point they're making here is making AI a part of the DevOps process. So rather, when part of your operational processes is rather than a specialized or isolated project. So when it's part of the nuts and bolts of your business and what you do every day that drives business decisions, or it might decide this is what the machine is going to work on today. This is the how it's going to cut that large chunk of metal because it's optimized based on that. So when AI starts to drive your business, and then all of us, as technology providers, it's our job to kind of translate some of these new technologies in what's going to make a difference for your business. And again, it's not pie in the sky anymore. And that's kind of our spin around this, is that, yeah, if you sit around and try to come up with large investment or development projects, it could be, but the idea is that it's turning into starting to operational processes. And that's another theme that we'll see in one of the other papers that I'll quickly feature. Hyper automation, again, there's another term. Someone just came up with this. And again, when you break down, yeah, it makes a ton of sense. But even if we say hyper automation is anything that can be automated, should be automated. Well, that kind of makes sense. But then as we talk about, well, how do you automate your business system if you're using a set of patchwork technology? So you have a fundamental barrier. If accounting doesn't talk to operations, or if you're not gathering the data, then that's not going to work so well. So that's got to be the starting point, and it's always a consistent theme that we have, is before you can start to consider automation, you have to get your foundation. You have to get a modern, in our case, a modern ERP system in place, so that it's gathering the data, it's consistent, you've got consistent business processes around it, and then you get to that level playing field. Then you can start to automate. That's always our message, but I like how they've described it, and they basically used exactly the same words that we often do.
See,
So
and I would think that that probably goes hand in hand to some level or degree with machine learning and artificial intelligence.
yes,
Because the
for
two of
sure.
them will go, like, I mean, and I think, in the AI series that I did, to sort of break that down, when we talk about machine learning and AI in a real life day-to-day example, best example I can always provide is Netflix, right? Machine
Yeah.
learning is the study and the research an application is doing based on analyzing your trends. So if you tend to watch a lot of criminal shows, or prison shows, machine learning is capturing that. But artificial intelligence is the trigger that's recommending other criminal or
Yeah,
prison shows.
exactly.
That's what it is, and that's why I think when we talk about AI, a lot of people think, oh, robots. It's not that. No, that's an aspect of AI, and it's overkill, but it can be so simple. A recommendation, that is the trigger.
Yeah.
AI is the trigger, machine learning is research.
If I go, I'm just going to highlight a couple. Again, if we looked at a couple of these links here, I'll go into this Forbes one here, and you'll see the first, we think the 5 biggest technology trends. I think the first one they mentioned is artificial intelligence here. So that is the first one. So there you
Yeah.
go. There's consistency. We look at Gartner, Forbes. I'm going to show into Deloitte as well too. Consistency with artificial intelligence. I think is here, I'm just going to go back to my same search that I did here and pull up the Deloitte one, because it actually, where is that one? Here it is here. It actually kind of makes that same point that we've just made, to say that, hey, this needs to be part. It's one thing to talk about AI or industrialized AI and that kind of stuff, but if we do that, one thing is about how can we, here, I'm going to go to the executive summary on this. This is actually, I think this is well done how they've laid it out here, because they throw each section, and there's a little bit of an executive summary. They talk about the strategy engineered, and talk about technology as a competitive advantage, and so on. The one thing I'll point out is supply unchanged. I love that point. So I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail around it, but here is this industrialized AI. So again, the same point, that to make sure that if this is part of your day-to-day business, then that's how you can start to get artificial intelligence and that kind of automation, part of your business. But that's, anyway, there's if you're interested, I have links to these 3 things. We'll write a blog post, and we'll recap some of this discussion on it, because I think these are some good trends, or some good technical things. But again, what's most important is that we don't get bogged down by the the, what is ML ops, for example. We don't get bogged down by the terms, but we start to break it down as to what's relevant for your business. So that's always our theme. Sam, a final thought before we close off
My
here?
final thought is I think we should definitely do a follow-up podcast on this to talk about AI, machine learning, and some of these more common buzzwords, and really just break it down for the mid-market and how it's used, among our customers or things like that. My closing thought is ultimately, it comes back to the whole server thing. If you have a server sitting in your building, get rid of it. Push it to the cloud, because I really hate that. There is no reason anybody should have servers sitting in their building anymore unless you're like a hospital, right? There's these government, businesses or whatever that actually have corporate policies in place that they must have a server in their building. And if you do not have that, go to the cloud and get involved in your cybersecurity mesh.
Yes, there you go. Okay, thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks, guys.